Good afternoon and welcome to the September 28th, 2020 Park Advisory Committee of the East Bay Regional Park District. Chair Rickard, would you like me to take roll?
Yes, let me make a comment first.
Okay, thank you.
That today's Park Advisory Committee meeting is being held in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order, allowing for members to participate in standing committee meetings remotely. We are also providing live audio streaming and have provided the public the opportunity to email or call in prior to the meeting for public comment. Information can be found on the agenda on the district website, ebparks.org. Before we begin the roll call, do any committee members have questions about the meeting procedures? Hearing none, then would you please take the roll, Sharon?
Thank you, Chair Rickard. Board Member Dennis Waspy is present. Vice Chair Obringer.
I'm here.
Member Andrade.
Here.
Member Best.
Here.
Member Brubaker.
Yes, I'm here.
Member Buren is absent. Member Burke is absent. Member Carey. Member Carey. Okay, let's see. Member Corkin.
Oh, I'm here.
Thank you. Member DeChambeau. Member DeChambeau is here. Member Dieter.
Here.
Member Gregory. Member Gregory, I believe, is here. Let me just look. Yes, he's here. Member Ho.
Here.
Member Lacey.
Here.
Member Nason is absent. Member Robinson is here. Member San Juan. Member San Juan. Okay. Member Skardoff.
Here.
Member Sutsui.
Here.
Member Williams.
Here.
And Chair Rickard. Okay. Staff present this evening: Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, Eric Fuller. AGM of Public Safety, Chief Cheerborough. I do not know if Juliana Shermer has entered. Assistant Finance Officer Deb Spalding is present.
Here.
Thank you. Lisa Baldinger, Lance Breed, Matthew James, Andrew Waller of PrimeGov, Jim Tallarico, and also Sydney Erickson of PrimeGov. Have I missed any staff or any PAC members?
Juliana is here now.
Juliana, okay. Oh, and Captain Alan Love is here. Thank you.
And Captain Lance Breed, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the July 27th Park Advisory Committee meeting. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes?
I move approval, Chair.
I'll second. This is Linda.
Okay, moved by,
Harlan.
okay,
And second by Linda.
and second by Linda. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, recording secretary, would you please call the roll for the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Obringer,
Yes.
Member Andrade,
Yes.
Member Best,
Yes.
Member Brubaker,
Yes.
Member Corkin,
I abstain.
Member DeChambeau,
Yes.
Member Dieter, Member Dieter,
Yes.
Member Gregory, Member Ho,
Yes.
Member Lacey,
I abstain.
Member Robinson,
Yes.
Member Skardoff,
Yes.
Member Williams,
Yes.
and Member Satsui.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is comments from Board Member Dennis Weisby, the board member from Ward 3. Dennis, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me this afternoon. I'm reminded of the old saying or curse, I think it's called now, and I forget who to attribute it to, but he said, "May you live in interesting times." And I think we're surely doing that. Interesting, it's a euphemistic term that we're using, but the Park District continues to be resilient. Even throughout these crazy times. You know, we started off with COVID-19. As fits and starts, we had our handle on it. We're getting a handle on it. People are coming. Most of our parks are open. Enjoying the peace and respite of the Park District. We're dealing with social unrest. We're dealing with smoke drift. And now currently the latest is the heat, wind, and red flag alerts. We have firefighters on duty throughout the Park District, spending the night at fire stations. Everyone is on full alert and heightened alert and prepared and ready to go. And we are depending upon all of our pre-fire mitigation that we've done throughout the years in our fuel break and our urban interface. Hopefully we won't be tested with that, but we're ready to go. We continue to, believe in our mission and philosophy. To pardon the expression, when the world's going to hell in a sled, get into nature, get into nature. That's where it's really real. That's where you can find peace. And that's why our parks are open. We're still on track to open some parks. We're talking about reoperating parks. Some of our parks are partially open, but on October 2nd, we plan on introducing day use, boating, and camping at Lake Del Valle. We're also going to introduce camping at Lake Chabot, Anthony Chabot. And they're renting boats at Lake Chabot, and the concession is working. And we're going to return to allowing dogs off leash in parks where they were allowed off leash in the past. So we're trying to get back to normal. We're crossing our fingers, hoping the next thing won't occur, but we're working towards that. That's our goal. That's our mission, and we continue to work towards that. Some past things that have occurred in the last, or since you've last met, I don't know if you're aware, but the Regional Park District for 3 years now has hosted the United Nations International Day of Peace at Lake Chabot Park. Unfortunately, we had to do it virtually by Zoom this year, but it was great. It was a tremendous gathering of faith communities, diverse communities, different cultures that all got together in the name of peace and world peace. It was co-hosted by the Regional Park District, the Eden Interfaith Council, and Sutter Medical Ethnic Health Institute, and sponsored by the Regional Parks Foundation. So it was a wonderful event. I want to give a shout out to Mona Coe, our community outreach specialist, who did a wonderful job gathering people together. The music was beautiful. The words spoken were beautiful. It was just a great event. And we plan on doing this in perpetuity at Lake Chabot every year on September 23rd. September 21st. And with that in mind, next year we're going to erect a peace pole, which is 8 foot tall. It'll be a permanent fixture at Lake Chabot, as will our celebration. And it will be offering words of peace in 14 different languages. So we're really proud of that and really happy that that occurred. It wasn't in person, but it was a very touching event, and I was very, very proud to be a part of that. So that's lots of stuff going on, of course. I always laugh being with 33 cities and 2 counties. Something's going on all the time, too big to know about, but you read it in the papers. We're involved in opening parks, getting sued over opening parks. we're staying our mission, and we're still doing great work. So thank you for having me, and thank you for all your good work.
Thank you, Board Member Weisbrod. I believe our next agenda item is a report from the foundation from Juliana.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So we're going to be giving a presentation a little bit later tonight, but I'll just give you kind of a quick update that everything is going really well for the foundation as well as can be expected. We're working remotely and doing as much as we can for fundraising and keeping memberships going during this time. But we have some exciting things happening, and we'll be excited to share those with you later. As Director Waspy was saying, we were also thrilled to be able to sponsor the International Day of Peace the other week, and we do hope that we can continue doing that every year, and we look forward to underwriting the cost of the Peace Poll as well. That's my update, unless anyone has any questions.
Well, yeah, any questions for Juliana? I know we're going to hear more from you later, but there may be questions that people want to ask now. No? Well, thank you, and we will hear from you shortly. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Chair Rickard. I know that Mr. Abreu wanted to speak. I'm looking to see if he's here. Yes, he is. Let me ask to unmute him.
Hi.
Yeah, Kelly, are you there?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. First off, congratulations to Chief Chiburo and Captains Breed and Love on last Friday, where they did a trophy haul at Guerin Regional Park of 1 ton of cannabis. They hauled away 1 ton. That's it's a big number. Then there was a park-related thing, a lawsuit, which was filed against the city of Palo Alto, which I went to the Human Relations Commission of Fremont, City of Fremont, California, and presented them with this lawsuit stories, which are on the Chronicle and the Mercury News. There's a park in the city of Palo Alto which is truly unique because they restrict visitors to only city residents, and they've been doing that for 50 years. And it's considered now a racist practice and racist and discriminatory. So the ACLU has filed a lawsuit recently, 2 weeks ago, against the city to stop this practice. Even their own mayor is opposed to it, the mayor of the city of Palo Alto. So, and this was brought up as a precedent in the city of Fremont. Local residents who want to shut down Mission Peak would point to that park and say, yeah, of course we can discriminate in park entry, and we should be able to have lower entry fees or higher discriminatory parking fees or whatever for outsiders who come to visit our neighborhood and visit our Mission Peak park. And at that meeting where I was talking, the Human Relations Commission of Fremont, and this story is going to end tragically, and if I go over time, I'd appreciate a few seconds to get to the end of the story because the end is very important and very tragic. The Human Relations Commission of the City of Fremont, there was an incident related to the International Day of Peace, which happened a couple of days ago at Lake Chabot. But this happened on September 18th in the city of Fremont in a district called Niles. A group of people was praying in a city park. And some people walked up passing by and directed some hate speech at them. They notified the local police, and I informed them of what happened in Lake Chabot 5 years ago and how the park district responded. And they threw the book at the perpetrators, and that incident is now turned into something positive. So that serves as, I think it should help the people. It was a Fremont resident who was the victim, and a group of Fremont residents were victims of this. And I think it was it was so similar. The same thing happened in Lake Chabot 5 years ago, and it happened on September 18th in the city of Fremont again. And I don't think that that the Human Relations Commission, nobody in Fremont was aware of the connection, but it's very similar. In fact, the religion was the same, the park setting was the same, and the sort of hate speech was almost the same. The only thing was missing was a cup of coffee being thrown at the victim. That was missing in Fremont. And the commission that heard this was the Human Relations Commission of the city of Fremont. One of the members of that commission it was named Feda Al-Maliki, the mother of three, and an advocate for people with autism, as one of her children had autism. Last Saturday morning, she and her child, her son, were died in a house fire inside their own home in the city of Fremont. So I'd like to memorialize and the life, the wonderful works of Mrs. Al-Maliki, and what she did for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. We'll proceed now to our presentations. The first presentation is from Eric and Lisa on the park and public interest and COVID-19 survey results.
Late afternoon, early evening. Eric Feeler, manager of the Government Affairs Unit in the Park District. And we wanted to bring to you tonight some results of a survey that we conducted in July. This is based on a project that my colleague Baldinger is the project manager for that started in 2019 with the Park and Public Interest Community Survey. We had always had intention to follow that up, and this is a presentation about that follow-up. So I would like to invite Lisa, who designed the program, the project, and was the project manager and is also together this presentation to begin the presentation, and then I will come back toward the COVID portion of the presentation. So Lisa, if you could please start, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
So just to get started, thank you, Eric, and then also thank you to our colleague Yuli Padmore for her support on this project, and of course our general manager. So as Eric mentioned, today we're going to be giving an update on a continuation of a project that we presented before all of you in 2019. So it was called the Park and Public Interest Community Engagement Project, and it was widespread. And thank you for all of you who participated in the survey, who shared our bookmarks. As you can see, it was conducted in parks. We got it out through our social media channels, at the county fair. So a lot of really great engagement with our public. And we received, some more engagement, some op-eds. It was conducted in 4 languages, in English, Spanish, Korean, and Chinese. So just widespread engagement. And we were really excited to receive over 8,000 responses, which is the most responses we've ever historically had on a survey. But then we wanted to take it one step further and confirm the results of what we heard through a scientific survey. And we wanted to build off of what we learned. So the Park District has been conducting community surveys beginning in 1976, and it's always been a great means to understand our community's needs, to hear from them, and then also, of course, to garner voter support. So here in this survey, the park and public interest was widespread in parks, et cetera. And a thing we really noticed about the survey was how many folks engaged over their cell phone devices. And so going out and reviewing consultant proposals, we really wanted to focus in on one that would include a text element. And so we conducted the scientific portion of this survey with Lake Research Partner. They did a phone to text online survey in English and in Spanish of 500 adults. The first half of this presentation will be sharing the continuation of the 2019 Park and Public Interest study. And then the second part, which Eric will share, is that we couldn't disregard the current situation. And so we included and expanded our survey questions to include some on COVID and what's currently happening in the world. So to begin, as I shared, it was really important to us that there was some text element in this survey. Anyone who received a text was given an option to call a phone number and take it over the telephone, or if they received a phone call, they were given an option to change from a cell phone to a landline, or a landline to a cell phone, or switch and receive a text. So just lots of options to really allow the survey taker to pick the medium of their greatest comfort. And so as you can see, 72% opted to do it over text. We always want to know about the awareness of the Park District. So 92% going in were aware of the East Bay Regional Park District, just name alone. We didn't have anything else, just are you aware of the East Bay Regional Park District? Here in this survey, which was conducted over text and cell phones rather than in park, you'll see that the strength of awareness is a little bit lower, but overall consistently, our name continues to be well known in our community. We asked about how often folks are visiting the park, and about 50% visit more frequently than a week, and about 50% a little bit less than a week, so a monthly special occasion. We asked about why they're coming to the park. And so based off the open-ended results of the 2019 survey, we were able to expand our options. And here for the July 2020 survey, we included fresh air, which got high results, as well as time with family and friends, relaxation and physical health, arguably more important now than ever before. Use of trail. In the previous survey, we only had hiking as an option in terms of getting out on a trail without any sort of devices or anything. Based off the open-ended results, we expanded that to include walking, and we were able to double the number of responses that we captured there, being that folks see hiking and walking as different activities. Also dog walking, biking, and social events on the trail received high results. We asked about how folks are getting to our parks. Here we have personal vehicle continues to be far and away the highest results, but walking and biking are proving to be a means of access, carpooling, and then looking at the, we'll share the demographics from this survey in a little bit, but looking at the crosstabs, it's in Northwest Alameda that public transit actually has a little bit of a spike. And we believe that to be because of our Tilden bus route in partnership with AC Transit. Overall experience at the East Bay Regional Park District, 97% positive. We're really happy to see that, being that this survey encompassed some new voices from our previous landline methodology surveys. This was a slide that was really important to look at the demographic crosstabs where we have barriers to visit. So though we always are encouraging, please go to a park with a friend, it's safe for safety. A barrier here that was identified in the open-ended survey is not wanting to go alone. And so we included that here, and we're really looking forward to expanding this question on future surveys as to, is this a social barrier of companionship, or is this a safety barrier? This result received, you can see about 20%, and then it increased to 30% when you broke it out to only female respondents, and 37% for women of color. So that's substantial, and we really want to know more. Lack of appropriate restrooms, personal safety, and don't know how to access or additional barriers that stood out to us that we look forward to expanding in future surveys and learning more. We asked about future park and trail amenities, and when we get to the COVID-related slide, you'll see that these amenities and the priority of the public through the lens of a pandemic do change, but this question was prefaced of this is during COVID and after COVID, what would you like to see? Consistently in the 2019 and the 2020 survey, water bottle filling stations, additional restrooms, off-leash dog areas, shade structures really come to the top. We always want to include a question is how do you learn about East Bay Regional Park District? And we're pleased to see that our website continues to be the top medium where folks are garnering information about us, which is great because that's where we're really pushing out our information. That's where I go. And then family, friends, and colleagues here is the second highest. And so through word of mouth. One that we added again from the open-ended questions, other websites, so All Trails. And that is a top place for folks to learn a little bit about East Bay Regional Park District and access. So now I'm just gonna share the demographic info so you can sort of understand who we were able to capture through this new methodology, as well as maybe spark some questions about what we can look into on the crosstabs. These demographics were weighted relative to the East Bay census information. So the two key benefits here are that we are able to ensure that it aligns with our census and then also break out our crosstabs from the demographics. So we have it geographically. So as I shared, we were able to see a spike in public transportation by county. This is relative to population size. We have identified gender, the age of who we were surveying, employment status and last year of schooling, whether they own or rent, and children living at home, how long folks have lived here in the East Bay, and then lastly, identified racial or ethnic group. And for those who identified as Asian, American, or Pacific Islander, they received a second question to further specify identified racial or ethnic group. So with that, that concludes the Park and Public Interest continuation portion, and I'm going to hand it off to Eric to share our COVID-related questions, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, just a couple of quick comments, and I apologize, the train is leaving near our house. And the barrier slide, that the largest response was none, which I think is that's encouraging in terms of the emphasis on access. But I will say that one of the reasons we chose the Lake Research Partners, which is a nationally known firm founded by Celinda Lake, who was a pollster for Bill Clinton in his 92 campaign. And so we wanted a firm that would do a deeper dive into the community. So that last slide that Lisa showed you on the demographics and the different, in the age range also is unique to some of our survey work and very much intentional. Also wanted to just say that we did not, this was not just registered voters that we surveyed. We surveyed the broader community to try to really do a deeper dive and learn how to better listen and communicate across the community. So I really applaud Lisa's efforts on this, her management of this. I think it's an ongoing project and it's one that we're very proud of. And so the Park and Public Interest Survey and Community Engagement Project will continue to move forward. But as Lisa indicated in the very beginning of this presentation, we would have been a little bit tone deaf to not ask COVID questions at this time. We had done a survey in May, the different firm that did strictly registered voters, and the results are actually pretty much the same, which is encouraging, but also interesting in terms of the impacts that, well, the impact coronavirus has on park users. So with that, next slide, please. So the basic question, do you consider the East Bay Regional Parks to be an essential service at this time? And the response was 81% said yes. That's a little bit up from our May survey, but not a lot. I think it was about 79% in May. This is an important figure for us when we do our advocacy, particularly in Washington, D.C., as it relates to emergency funding, and impacts to our funding from expenses that are COVID related. Next slide, please. And then how important has it been to have parks open? 92% response said it was important. And that mirrors pretty much what our mark was in May. So it's not entirely surprising given that we, as Lisa says, we're the only game in town. But it's good to see that we are continuing to be used, and it also indicates that keeping parks open means we were on the right side of history. Next slide, please. Then we asked a series of questions to which the polling firm was astounded by these results. To Lisa and I, they were not surprising because we've been seeing high numbers like this for a number of years, but the idea that parks are more important than ever for physical exercise, somewhat obvious, just given that there are less alternatives, but 96% agreement on that one. Next slide, please. Then this is the one that I often pause on when we get to it, because a 96% agreement on the need for parks to stay open for people's mental and psychological health. I think this is an issue, much like Lisa indicated in some of the other slides, that we would dig deeper into in a future survey. Park District has been using the Healthy Parks, Healthy People emphasis since, I don't know, probably for the last 12 years. And it really demonstrates that that is actually true. And on a previous survey, we asked this question. It also indicated that 74% of those who agree that their psychological and mental health was impacted said that it will have this situation will have lasting mental health impacts. So something we really need to keep in mind as an agency and as a community moving forward. Next slide, please. Then this is probably also not so surprising, but parks and open space and trails needed for places for children to play or be outside and active. 96% agree. Not surprising given this was taken in July when school was not in. And for those of us who have children at home, we know that they were going stir crazy and still are, frankly. Next slide, please. And another issue that we wanted to drill down in, it doesn't have quite as much strongly agreement, but it definitely has 90% agreement, is the impact our agency and the projects we do have on our local economy. We are doing a deeper dive on this with a different firm to actually find a algorithm or a metrics for determining how many additional jobs our projects create. So for example, the Bay Point restoration was determined that it actually impacted 200 additional jobs outside of park employees. And so those kinds of impacts are really very important to the economy, and we need to make sure that the 35% there move to a strongly agree eventually, but very important information to have. Next slide, please. And then I think Lisa alluded to this question, how it differs when you ask in a non-COVID world, as we indicated in the earlier slides, and now when we ask during the pandemic, what amenities folks would want. Hand washing stations move to the top. You see it's broken down by county there. Additional restrooms, roughly the same. But the idea the water bottle filling stations are much lower is, I think, also an indication of our great messaging from our public affairs department in terms of making sure people bring their water bottles with them and bring them full, because for the longest time during this pandemic, we had our water fountains turned off. So that is an indicator that people were understanding they needed to bring their own water. Next slide, please. And then this was a kind of an off the charts moment, how important our East Bay Regional Park District staff during this pandemic. 99% said they're important. Again, another recognition of not only public affairs great work, but how important our staff is to making sure that parks are safe and clean, and that people have a positive experience, and that we have the trust and the belief from the community that we are an agency they want to support. And then, as our colleague Yuli Padmore always wants to point out, who is that 1% that doesn't want clean restrooms and doesn't want to mitigate for wildfire? Kind of a strange answer. Next slide, please. And then this is the last set of questions, but we also wanted to ask, and I should have properly thanked the general manager for his support at the beginning of this presentation, but he's wanted us to talk or to check in on youth jobs and trails and vegetation management crews in the survey. So we asked the question, do you believe that there should be more job opportunities for young people in the community? And that received a very strong 89% support. So then we also asked them if there was a willingness to pay. So out of the 445 people that said they support the idea, 68% said yes. So that's more than 2/3 in terms of margin of error for a voting measure. We were not asking in that context, but it is very interesting to see that people would be willing to pay for that. And I think it says a lot about the situation that we're in and keeping people employed and doing what we can as citizens and as local units of government to help keep things moving forward as much as possible. And I believe that concludes the slideshow. Did want to open it up for questions and comments. But again, this is a project that we've been very proud of. Lisa initiated it, managed it, and we're going to be doing more of a deeper dive in the future. So it would probably come back at some point. But it's really helpful for us to understand the interests of our communities moving forward, and also to do that broader outreach and engagement to parts of the community that perhaps have not always been engaged with through our work. And so we're really going to do some more deep drilling down in the next year, and we'll be back before you know it. So with that, unless you have something more, Lisa, I think we were open for questions.
Thank you both, Lisa and Eric. Very interesting information. And we will, I'm sure, have some questions. I see one question from Carlin on the chat. Would it be possible to share the presentation electronically with the members of the PAC?
Yes, I will share. It's too big for email, so I'll share a PDF with Sharon and we'll get it all out to everyone.
Great.
Thank you. Because I was just curious about, I wanted to look a little bit more deeply at some of the demographic information, because I know we've got this racial equity presentation that's coming up. And I know the Park District has been working so hard to try to connect with and encourage people of color to enjoy the parks. So just kind of trying to connect everything and track our progress in that area.
So that's a great comment and observation, and we are working with Juliana and her team on additional engagement and listening. So we will be bringing that forward at a future meeting. But yes, this was a very exciting research project for us in terms of getting into a broader suite of demographics. So thank you for that comment.
Sure, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Carlin. Neil, I believe you have a question.
Great, thanks. A great presentation. It's nice to see these huge numbers that are, supporting the parks, and I think it's a real testimony to the quality of the parks and the staff, all of you who run it. One of the numbers that jumped out at me from the demographic presentation was the number of youth in the survey was 3%, and I guess that is an indicator that probably there weren't too many youth respondents. And if that is the case, I was wondering, could you give us an indication if like about what percentage of park users are youth?
Neil, just to confirm, I just pulled up the demographic slides, and for 18 to 24, we did receive 9%. For 25 to 29, it was 11%. I believe the 3% you're looking at is for last year of schooling. 3% of respondents completed 1st through 11th grade. So we did have about 20% of what one might qualify as youth respond to the survey.
Okay. So those numbers are the percentages of people who responded to the survey. Is that right?
Correct.
And so do we know if that is, if that reflects usage of the park? Is about 20% of our usage youth?
We don't know. So that's sort of the number that we're all reaching for right now, is to understand actual usage. And Eric and myself and our colleagues are discussing with a number of sort of different tech creative ideas to come up with who's physically using the park. But at this time, I mean, our best idea is to put an intern at every single entrance to count. And so that would be a lot of jobs, which is great, but be a bit of an endeavor.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Lewis.
Lewis, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Lewis.
Yeah. Sorry. So regarding demographics, have you seen a change in the demographics of people using the parks during the COVID period as opposed to prior to that? And also, do you have total numbers of park users? I know that wasn't part of the survey, but has anyone tracked the total number? Because it seems like it's quite a bit higher recently.
Well, I think that please jump in if you want, but I think we might be providing you the same answer we just provided, Neil.
Okay.
That we don't have a firm number of users overall, but we are looking at ways to use technology such as cell phone tracking data and other GIS methods to try to do that, to figure out usage. We know anecdotally that we are seeing an increase of usage of all demographics. But to quantify that and add some scientific or some background to it that we could say with certainty, we don't really have that. The best we can say is that we have some trail counters that we know are spiking, but they also are typically on our you know, they're the sort of the paved active transportation trails, so it doesn't really give us a good sense of what's in the park. So we're looking at ways to try to drill down and see if there's some way we can do that without, as Lisa indicated, having a person sitting at every entrance to every park.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roland.
Yes, thank you. Great presentation. I had two questions, or one comment, one question. I'll give you my comment first. And if I remember correctly from the survey, it sounded like there was a lot of interaction through the internet, and perhaps this might be picked up in the next presentation, but always concerned about digital divide and how it specifically affects people in challenging positions, usually people of color, people of underserved. So how that data gets used should be carefully kind of assessed. And the second question is more of is really a question. So we had a similar presentation back in July about a similar survey. So can you kind of help me explain how this survey is different? It seems like some of the data was the same, and I'm just curious. We just had another survey presentation, so I'm trying to understand how these two work separately or together.
Well, firstly, thank you for your comment. The digital divide, we are very cognizant of going into the 2019 survey and did our best to have as much in-person hard copy surveys in the park as possible. And of course, we can always do better. For the previous survey that was presented before the PAC, that was conducted in May of this year to voters. It was done, the methodology was landline only, and it was focused on COVID exclusively. This survey was intended to be a continuation of our engagement project to better understand the best communication channels to engage with the public and to create just sort of a broader scope of feedback. The COVID questions in this survey were because we didn't feel like we could exclude it in the moment, but this survey was not exclusively focused on COVID. So that's the reason for the redundancy. And we were pleased to see that the trends were consistent. And on this survey, as the pandemic had been in effect for about 2 months longer, the percentages were higher on the concerns of the public.
And I think just to add to that, Lisa, that the firm that we chose were chosen specifically because they had a technique for reaching out beyond the landline and particularly text. And that is something that generally, I think I agree very much. Thank you for what you mentioned about the digital divide. But we can look into the crosstabs and see how much impact or how much feedback we got on the text responses from the varying demographics. I think that might be a good exercise for us to look at. So thanks for raising it.
Great, thank you. Michael, I assume you would like to talk about the cell phone use?
We can't hear you, Michael.
Well, I can tell you that His comment in the chat box was awesome cell phone use, almost universal. One easy application, QR signs with links to district maps and updates. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Eric or Lisa.
The that might be referencing the how folks get their information or having better maps and signage. We were a little puzzled by that response, that was even as high as it is, because our public affairs department and graphics department did an awesome job, and there are signs out there. So we're going to have to drill down to see what the demographics of that answer were in terms of the and what the concern was. But happy to, the QR code is something that we should be looking into more for more of our publications. So appreciate that feedback.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't see any other hands raised, but if there are other questions, please let me know. Speak up now. Apparently not. Eric and Lisa, thank you so much. Very interesting presentation. We look forward to hearing from you again next year, maybe in person.
Hopefully. All right, thank you.
Yes. The next presentation is from the Regional Park Foundation regarding the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Program. Carol and/or Juliana?
Okay, well, I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Give me 1 second. I apologize, Carol Johnson is unable to join us this evening, so I will be doing our entire presentation. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, oops, sorry about that. Thank you for having us here tonight to be able to give an update on the Regional Parks Foundation and kind of where we are in the status of things during COVID, and also the work that our board has been doing in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to go ahead and start with our update about the foundation and how we're currently operating. As I shared at the beginning of this meeting, we are all working remotely. Things are going well. We have figured out all of our processes and all of our equipment to be able to maintain donor and member relations and to be able to collect donations and memberships during this time. We are sad to report that our membership sales are down about 30% year to date, and this is largely due to all of the pandemic-related closures. So as many of you may know, one of the largest areas of membership growth for us over the recent year and a half has been membership sales at kiosks in parks and through our partnerships with third-party retailers like REI. So with those facilities closed, it's taken away some of those access points where we're normally able to sell on site. And then in addition, the kiosks are currently closed, so they're not taking payment. And not all of our members have a membership solely for the purpose of the tangible benefits, but many of them do. So I think some people are choosing to hold off the renewal of their memberships until the parks continue to collect fees. So we're monitoring that. We're doing what we can to message to the general public that these funds are 100% of our unrestricted revenue comes from our membership program. And this is directly what we give back to the Park District to fund all of the great programs that you see every year. So we'll continue putting that out there and hoping that people will continue to support us. One thing we've seen, our campership appeal went out in the spring a couple of months ago, and year over year it performed as well as it did in 2019. So that shows us that even during these times, people have been extremely supportive, understanding that we have transitioned our campership support from on-site programming in the parks to more virtual programming, purchasing equipment for the naturalists to be able to produce these videos, and at-home learning kits for members of the community to utilize. In addition, during this time of transition, we've had some key projects that we're working on. One is a sizable land donation of hundreds of acres that looks like it should be coming through the Regional Parks Foundation. It's called Tasahara Farms. It's looking like that could happen before December, so that would be a donation that we would take ownership of and then pass to the district. We're also finalizing our endowment agreement with the East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservancy. This is to manage their long-term fund for the HCP. This fund is expected to grow to over 80 million in the next several years. This was an agreement that we launched with them last year, and we're looking to take the initial deposit of just over 2 million to seed that endowment, hopefully by November or December of 2020. In addition, we are working on our own member and donor survey. We have postponed it a little bit just because, as Eric and Lisa just shared, there's a current survey going on and we didn't want the two to get confused. But this is really our opportunity to hear from constituents and hear from the public about the work that the Regional Parks Foundation is doing, areas that we're supporting, and hopefully to hear areas where there's gaps and things that people would like to see us do with our resources. And finally, our other big project is the capital campaign that we announced at the end of 2019 that we will be launching for the renovation of the Tilden Environmental Education Center. We've not forgotten this. This just was not the year that we had originally predicted. So launching a large campaign during this time has been a little bit challenging, but the Park District should have some internal resources and project managers available to help with the internal analysis, going out for RFP and looking for consultants to help us figure out the budget and the timing and all of those good things that we'll need to start our fundraising. So that should be happening starting in October. So as staff, one of the things that we're doing is understanding that individuals are having a really difficult time. Some people are underemployed or unemployed. It's hard time to make a donation or maybe even to continue those memberships. So we've been focusing on our corporate partners and foundations, letting them know some of the great work that we're continuing to do, the increased visitorship that the Park District is seeing, and also about this diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that we're launching. And we're seeing some enthusiastic support of all of those things. So that's been helping us to raise some funds during this time. Additionally, some corporations came to us and asked if the Regional Parks Foundation has a corporate membership program, something along the lines of a sponsorship, or perhaps they could have, for whatever size of gift, like a tiered support, where they could have memberships for their employees. So we're working on that right now and looking at what kind of key benefits they would get for each of those tiers and categories. And one of the things that we're building into that is the opportunity for the corporations to donate all or part of the memberships they would receive for their sponsorship back to underserved communities. And so far, the corporations that we've spoken with are very much in favor of doing so. We drafted a proposal for Prop 64 funds. This was for a new project for a greenhouse and youth development program out at Ardenwood. And so something that we worked with Interp and Rec for, and we're really excited to see this happen. Hopefully we'll get awarded, but this is a good opportunity not only to teach organic gardening and local gardening, but the students would then come on board with internships and talk about food sustainability and take that back to their schools and their families. And then, as we talked about earlier, our board and diversity committee supported the International Day of Peace, and we will continue to do so with the placement of the peace pole once that has been designed and ready to be installed. So this is the sad part. You know, I think you guys are used to us coming before you every year and showing consecutive years of growth. I will say that 2020, again, is not the year that we had anticipated, and it has hit us hard financially. As you'll see in the column on the right, in 2019, we ended the year raising over 4.6 million, and we felt like we had some really great opportunities this year where we could perhaps even meet that. Unfortunately, we have done a budget modification. We did that for the halfway through the year, and we revised down our budget from just under 3 million down to 1.7, and as of July 31st, we'd raised just under $1 million. So again, this kind of shows you each of the different categories and where we raise our monies and what's happening to us this year. We can say that, again, those other great projects will at least help us with the balance sheet. They don't really help with raising money for programs, but the land donation will be hitting this year, hopefully, as will the $2 million for the endowment. So it won't look bad on paper, but again, helping raise donations in the membership program is our bread and butter, and that's really how we give back to the Park District. So now on to our diversity, equity, and inclusion portion of this PowerPoint presentation. Our DEI task force was officially formed in 2019, but I would like to say this is something that has been a cornerstone program for the foundation really since our inception for the last 50 years, providing access for all, really focusing on underserved populations, lower income inner city neighborhoods, and people who need access to the East Bay Regional Parks. But our board of directors really wanted to see a specific, I think it started as a task force. It has since elevated itself into an official committee, but as an opportunity to evaluate what we're funding, what are we giving to the East Bay Regional Park District, are we serving our target populations? Are we doing what we say we're doing? Are there gaps in service delivery or areas that need improvement? So that's a key focus of this group. In addition, we want to work with the district to really quantify the outcomes and develop metrics. And this will help us as we go out for external fundraising. So as you guys have been talking about tonight, who visits our park? What are the demographics? What are the age groups? What is the geography? We need to be able to talk about those things in order to share with the funders who's using our parks and where we see gaps and where we need support. And overall, I would just say this committee is really enthusiastic about developing a sense of belonging and welcoming for people. So it's not just about giving somebody a pass and hoping that they'll come visit the park system, but we want to know that when they come and they visit a park, that there's something there that they want to do, and that there's something that's relevant to them and their family, and they feel welcome and included, and that they have the resources they need to participate. So these are all of the questions that they're asking and that we're looking into as this committee really kind of goes underway in 2020. So I'm hopeful that you've heard this announcement already, but again, in 2020, when the board started meeting with this group, they wanted to do something that was actionable and something that they could do right away and not just talk about what we're doing in this area of DEI. So on Juneteenth, I think we met as a committee the day before. We had about a 24-hour turnaround, but the committee decided unanimously that they would like to start giving 10% of the net proceeds of our membership program back to the community in the form of family memberships to Black, Brown, and people of color. So this in 2020 will equate to approximately 750 memberships that we can give away. And as we're doing this, again, under that welcoming and belonging and making sure that people feel supported through this process, we intend to do this through community partnerships and other nonprofit organizations so that they can help us with the intake. We'll be able to understand the demographics of the people we're serving, ethnicity, gender that people identify as, where they're living, what parks they go to. So we want to be able to do pre and post surveys to understand how familiar people are with the park system, if they've used any of the resources. And then on the back end, at the end of their one-year membership, we also want to know, did the membership help them in any way, or were there additional barriers that they had ran into, like transportation or other things that perhaps we could come up with some additional support to help them get into the parks. So far, we are also rolling this out with our community and corporate partners, and we're letting them know what we're doing, and we're inviting them to help us so that they can leverage our gifts, maybe even helping to double or triple our impact, and collectively we'll be able to serve even more people. So we're pleased to say that Marathon Petroleum, unfortunately, and it's been in the news, I think they're shuttering their operation, but we were one of the last gifts that they gave us. So they gave us $15,000 for public safety, and then they also gave us an additional $5,000 for this initiative to be able to provide 50 memberships in and around the area of their refinery. So they were our first corporate partner that's matching our efforts. We've also had some recent conversations and significant interest from our partner at Kaiser Permanente, the Oakland A's, PG&E, and then Intersect Power. They're a local power organization, and they reached out to us. They're one of the organizations that's interested in the corporate membership program. And they've indicated when they join that, they would like to give their memberships back to the community rather than keeping them for their employees. So here's just a little snapshot of how we're looking at rolling this out in 2020. So of those 750 memberships, we have not included any of the new gifts that we would be receiving from corporations. But of the 465, we're looking at a partnership with these organizations. So we've had a long conversation with Girl Scouts of America, and they have a local program that will start in October. And it's a direct fit. So it's getting girls of color out into the parks. It's teaching them about being in the wilderness, about exploration, and they want to come out into the East Bay Parks for that program. So this would be another layer of that. A good thing about working with them is they do have those program managers, and they are interested in helping us develop the pilot. So coming up with the pre and post surveys, doing all of the initial intake, and then we'll see how it goes. So in order to balance it a little bit and be able to have, all sides, we're also looking at the Boy Scouts to see if they have a program similar to what Girl Scouts is offering. And then we've had some initial conversations with Outdoor Afro, Latino Outdoors, and MLK Freedom Center. I will say we have a huge spreadsheet of potential organizations we would love to work with, and we hope to in future years as we get more of these memberships that we're able to donate. Unfortunately, in 2020, I think we've decided it would be best for us to start with a handful and be able to really test and pilot this and get our processes down and make sure it's seamless and smooth, and then we can roll it out on a bigger scale, hopefully next year. The remainder of the memberships, approximately 285, we have decided to use through our current partnerships through the Park District. So all of the programs that we fund have internal program managers, and those include like the Community Outreach Outdoor Program, after school excursions to parks, Teen Eco Action Week, mobile education. They would all like to have passes for their program participants as well. So these are the organizations that they work with that we are already funding through the Park District. So that includes Girls Inc. in Oakland, Brothers on the Rise, Yes Nature to Neighborhoods, Brown Girl Surf, the Oakland Public Library System, Ambrose Teen Center, City of Richmond Community Services, Radical Monarchs, Reach Ashland Youth Center, and the Rose Foundation. So we're really pleased. I think this is a good first start to launching this. It covers both Contra Costa and Alameda County, and we just really look forward to getting the data and seeing how individuals are using the parks and what they would like to see from us moving forward. That is the end of my presentation tonight, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Juliana. I see that we have a question from Michael Gregory. Michael, you're still on mute. No?
Still can't hear you.
You want to type your question?
Yeah, let me go to Carla, and she has a question, and we'll see if Michael can type in his question on the chat.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And I just was wondering, so you showed some of the corporations that are expressing some interest in sponsorship. Could you share a little bit more, or do you have like a handout of like the different tiers of sponsorship and what those provide? And my second question is, are there some corporations that are just donating to help provide the memberships for some of those groups that you just had on some of your last slides to help them get them into the parks?
So it really is a mix. I would say so far, most of the corporations we've spoken with want to just donate the monies to the free passes that we can give out to members of the community. Unfortunately, I don't have a handout that I can have ready for you today. I have the different tiers. It starts at $2,500 and we have it going all the way up to $100,000. And the way we've broken it out is, again, there's sponsorship recognition on our site, social media, the district site. And then depending upon the tier, there would be various levels of things that they would receive, like a corporate volunteer day in a park, perhaps lunch with the general manager, a kayak tour. But the reason I can't pass that out just yet is we're working with our counterparts at the district to just confirm their staffing levels. And if this really takes off, do they have the capacity to help us with the things that we've identified? So maybe by next month, I might be able to have a draft for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Igor.
Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
Okay. Really nice presentation. I really applaud your the way you're reaching out and using this pre-pass mechanism to get folks engaged. And that's really a cool idea. I like that a lot. I had a couple of questions. One of them had to do when you were talking about the income part. And it seemed to me that the one category of funding that really was growing was individual funding. It seemed like that one jumped up quite a bit. So I wonder if you might comment on why that might be happening. The other question I had, so I'd let you answer them in any order you wish, has to do with the board itself on the foundation. Is there any movement going ahead to make sure that the board is also diverse and you know, what are the demographics of the board reflective of the larger demographics of the population?
Yes. So I'll go back to your first question on our revenue sources. So I will say over time, we have increased our support from individual donors. Our membership program had grown to about 11,000. Again, unfortunately, it's gone backwards. We have about an 87% member retention rate historically. So we do believe when we start collecting fees and we are able to take membership sales again in the parks, that those numbers will continue to climb. We've also seen an increase in individuals leaving large gifts through bequests or through stocks and other types of gifts. So we've definitely seen an increase in that over the recent years. You know, in 2019, we had an anonymous donor give us $2 million for a special project to create a park or help with the development and the creation of a park. So those are those one-time kind of special gifts that you might see some spikes in our giving. And then so far this year, you know, that might show a little bit higher on the year to date because we had just launched an appeal where most of the donations were coming from individuals, whereas on the back end, now is when we should start seeing some of our grants and larger gifts coming from foundations. So it's more of a seasonality issue for 2020. And then as for our board, yes, we have a pretty comprehensive matrix that we use when we do any sort of board member recruitment. And it's looking at, you know, we're looking at gender, we're looking at age, range, we're looking at their employment, where they work, we're looking at their skills, how, like, are they a CFO in their company? Are they bringing something that will help us in an area where we need it? Is it marketing? Is it fundraising? Is it governance? And then we also break it down by ethnicity. So currently, forgive me, I think we're at 17 now. We just voted in 2 new board members, and I believe we're at 25% that I would say would be people of color on our board. So we're definitely working toward that. And, you know, I'd say we do have some gaps, and we could always put that out there in case you guys know anybody, but it's a top priority of our board. Every year there's a goal for bringing in 2 to 3 new board members, and we're looking at diversity for sure.
Well, that was a very interesting answer. I'm with the Resource Conservation District. We have our own little board, and we're kind of thinking it up as we go along, trying to make sure that we are also representative of the larger community. I would be very interested in getting a little more familiar with the matrix that you described. I wonder if that might be possible, because we definitely would love to steal your ideas if you're open to having us do that.
Yeah, I will take out any of the identifying information, but I'm happy to share that with you. for sure.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I have Michael Gregory's question now in the chat. I don't know if you can see it. He says, getting to parks we know is a huge challenge and should be explored. Love the pilot approach for the groups listed. Fear of water needs to be addressed as well. Many stay away because they can't swim. I know about the history of the Jack London Aquatic Center debacle. Lessons learned, question mark?
I'm not sure about the Jack London Aquatic Center debacle, but I can tell you we're definitely aware of fear of water or the need for additional water safety. And the Regional Parks Foundation funds a lot of aquatic programs for the aquatics department. That includes Vamos a Aprender, which is an outreach program in Del Valle and other areas where we give some basic water safety education, and then a free life preserver that the children and the families get to keep. We have also funded swim lessons, and they've done that, I want to say, in a couple of different, like in Hayward and then also in Oakland. And we started doing those with children, but what we found were the parents and the grandparents of those children were attending these lessons, and they came back to Pete and his team in aquatics and said they don't know how to swim either. So Pete then came back to us and said, would you fund us to teach the parents and the grandparents? And so that has been something that when the pools were open, we were also doing. So, you know, swim lessons and water literacy is good, but even just basic water safety and how to be safe. Now that the schools have kind of backed off teaching that, we're taking that on as one of our core tenets as well.
Thank you. Linda DeChambeau wants to know if there's a membership toolkit of some sort so that we PAC folks can act as champions for this great organization that we represent.
Yes. So I will get you all of our materials, kind of the talking points on the various levels of membership. And then as soon as we get this corporate membership finalized, I'll make sure everyone has that as well. You know,
Great.
Again, the draft is done. It just needs to be finalized with the different tiers.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Does anybody want to speak up who hasn't raised their hand?
I would.
Elisa?
Hi, thank you, Juliana. Great presentation. It's good to see that you guys are doing so much good. I think I remember hearing about this program in December when things were getting started. I think that's when things were getting started. I really like the fact that you're doing the give back to the community. 10% is going back to giving the memberships to people that may not be able to do it on their own and getting them out to the parks. I think that's really important. So I just wanted to give you my support for that part of it.
Thank you.
And say that, of course, we understand that this year is not anywhere near what 2019 was when it comes to memberships and fundraising. And yeah, this year is different all the way around. So good luck.
Thank you.
That's an understatement. That. Okay, no further questions? Juliana, thank you very much. We will look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our next item is the Major Infrastructure Renovation and Replacement Fund update by Deborah Spalding.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
You okay? Yeah. I'm Deb Spalding, Assistant Finance Officer. And I'm going to be talking to you guys about infrastructure today. I know Juliana's always a hard act to follow, and especially with infrastructure. But let me see. Taking it from the beginning. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, so our policy on major infrastructure renovation and replacement, MER policy, was approved by the board last year in November. So to some degree, you could say this is a little bit dated, but when how long we've gone without having a policy on this, you know, are we 85 years we just passed last year? It's still pretty new, and I think we're still learning and still definitely open to getting feedback And as you'll see, as we go through this, we're actually going to be, we've built into the policy that we're going to be looking every 5 years officially and reapproving by the board of directors. So any feedback we get is definitely helpful. And so I'm going to walk you through this PowerPoint, which will give you some of the overview and context, how we came up with the MER fund policy, and then I'll walk you through the policy itself. So the MER fund really came about over, maybe 15 or 20 years as we gained awareness that the Park District infrastructure was aging. And we were always addressing things sort of as they were falling apart, and the most urgent thing needed to get addressed. And it wasn't really proactive where you're thinking ahead, like, okay, what do we need to replace now so that it's going to cost us less, 10 years from now? And we had one thing in our kind of toolkit, which is that we had this pavement condition index. We've been measuring our pavement conditions since the 1990s, and it was working really well. So we were looking at how our paved roads and trails were being maintained and focusing on paving those that needed to be upgraded so that it would cost us less over the long term. And so we came up with this idea of creating a facilities condition index, or FCI, which would be just like our pavement condition index. And it turns out there's already people doing this, and there's a firm called VFA that does inventories of assets. And so we brought them in beginning in 2014 to inventory all of our assets and infrastructure. So bridges, buildings, piers, water and wastewater utilities were the main assets we were looking at. And turned out it took a lot longer than we thought it would because we have so many assets and so many parks. So we're still not quite done with this asset inventory, but we will show you what we've got so far. But from this inventory, we're able to develop a funding strategy to maintain and improve all these assets. So as of last year, this is a bit of an old slide. We had 1,112 assets in VFA showing their condition and their cost of replacement. And so that was 689 buildings, 157 bridges, 69 water utility systems, 46 piers and docks, 42 wastewater utilities, and then 109 other random assorted assets. So another thing we did as we were developing this policy is look at what other entities were doing. And so as we did our Google research, of course, we found the city of Santa Rosa as a good example. And then Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, that's a typo, and the National Park Service. So they all have facility condition indexes that they use. So here's some slides of the city of Santa Rosa. So they developed a 25-year infrastructure maintenance plan. So not just, they're ahead of us. So not just looking at, well, what assets do we have and what condition are they in, but they've started prioritizing when they all need to be replaced and even what the cost will be to repair and replace them. So you can see they've color coded everything and yeah, prioritized when everything needs to happen. And the goal of that is to come up with a funding plan. So again, City of Santa Rosa, they realized, hey, if we put money into this up front, we actually will not only improve the maintenance of our assets, but we will lower our costs over the long term. So that's what this graph is really showing. I don't know how closely you're looking at this graph, but one thing that's different about us versus the other entities we're looking at, we have our FCI on a 0 being a low score and 100 being a high score. A lot of other entities have that reversed. We wanted our score to match up with our PCI score. So when PCI 0 is bad and 100 is great. So our FCI matches that. Just ignore that phone ringing. Hopefully someone else will get it. So the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, they did a 10-year capital asset study and back in January 2019 and realized that they will require $169 million annually over the next 10 years just in order to maintain their assets. So they're obviously in worse condition than we are. They have a lot more assets, it sounds like, to maintain and maybe in a little bit lower state. But their goal is to restore and maintain all their capital assets as average or better within 10 years. So we looked at them as an example. And then lastly, the National Park Service. So they do FCI scoring for quite a while. And when they put forward proposals to Congress for funding, they have in here the FCI score before and after. And here you can see where it's kind of confusing, project justification. So the FCI before is 0.36, and then afterwards it'll be 0.12. So that's the reverse of us. A lower score is better. So all this is to say that other people are using the FCI scores, and we tried to copy what they were doing. And so we're getting close to having the VFA asset study completed. And so you can see here all of the park overall FCI scores. And these are from worst to most excellent. So down at the bottom, we've got McLaughlin East Shore and Coal Canyon, Lake Chabot. And in some cases there are certain, if you think about those parks, if you're familiar with them, you might think, oh yeah, that structure is pretty old. So if they have, just one or two structures out there and they're in poor condition. So we wrote in parentheses here just to explain it. At McLaughlin, it's the cafe that really brings our score down there. So those are our worst parks in terms of FCI scores only. And then the best maintained parks at this point are some of our newer ones like Big Break and Dublin Hills. So it makes sense. And then here are just some examples of facilities and how they're scored. So this is a really new restroom, almost brand new, out at Wildcat Canyon. Has an FCI score of 97 versus the swim restrooms at Lake Anza, which had a poor condition score. So just to highlight the policy before I flip over and we can go through it, we, after discussing this around and around quite a few times, decided we wanted to achieve a PCI score, so a pavement condition index score of 80, that was going to be our goal. And so there's a range from 70 to 84 is considered good. And then we said, let's sites on an FCI score of 72, which obviously is not, sort of like a C, but we would be really challenged to reach a higher score based on the current FCI score that we have. So of course, the quicker you want to raise your score and the higher you want your score to be, the more it'll cost. We also built into the policy a reserve amount that we would bring the scores to the board annually, and that our policy and our targets would be reviewed by the board every 5 years. So instead of taking questions or comments now, I think I'm actually going to flip over to the policy, and then I'll take questions. So let me stop my sharing for a minute. Then I'm going to reshare in a second. All right, is this, how legible is this to you guys? Thumbs up?
Good. Good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so all of our policies have the same sort of format where we talk about when it's effective, what are related policies and procedures, and then we have a summary statement. And we often in finance will refer to the GFOA standards. So GFOA recommends that you do capital planning and budgeting, and that you look at asset maintenance and replacement to figure out how to provide essential services. So moving on, we have some definitions: our pavement condition index, facilities condition index, and then current replacement value. And then we define what is our major infrastructure renovation and replacement internal service fund, or our MER fund, and a lot of the stuff that I've just talked to you about. And then here's where we set our performance standards, where we said we want our PCI to have an average score of 80 or above, and our facilities to achieve an average score of 72. And we qualify this in our policy, even that we understand this is low, but that we would be challenged to do higher than that, and that we can look at it every 5 years. We then talk about how the MER funding will be appropriated and to what types of projects. And then we talk about our goal for annual funding. So if we know we need to deliver between $7.5 and $9.5 million in projects per year, we have to fund it at about that much, about that level. And VFA actually has said that $10 million a year would be the ideal funding amount. So that's a real stretch goal for us, but that is our goal. We also talked about having a reserve fund within the MER, and the intent of that is, you know, if something critical were to come up, urgently needed to be replaced, we would have the funding to be able to address it versus scrambling and having to take it out of our general fund. Getting towards the end here, so we will report on the MER scores every year to our board of directors, and that the policy will be reviewed by the board of directors every 5 years and adjusted as needed. So that concludes the formal part of the policy, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
I see that Linda DeChambeau has a question for you.
Yeah, hi there. I was just trying to understand, I think early on you said this was relatively new and under development. I love the inventory, the FCI and all of that. And that one page you had, the summary of the chart scores wasn't in our report, but I think that's pretty informative just to have an idea of which category generally, you know, all of our assets are falling. But the one comment you just made towards the end, and there's a bullet point on the staff report that caught my eye, and maybe because it's still new, but there was a bullet that talks about a $500 million transfer was needed over from the general fund to do a mid-year adjustment. And I'm just curious, is the goal not to have to do that, that this fund would, and its reserve fund inside it would eventually take care of that, and that perhaps in the meantime, more than annual monitoring, and I guess throwing a bunch of questions out there, you can sort through them, but have there, since this mid-year adjustment been made, does it look like more is going to be needed as well?
Great question. So I hope I wrote $5 million, not 500, but
5 million.
5 million. Okay, good.
Did I say 500? Sorry, 5 million.
What did I write? So this is going to get maybe accounting heavy, but our MER fund is set up as an internal service fund. So what's happened is that we are annually determining how much revenue to put into this fund. And again, based on the policy, we're aiming for between 5 and 7.5 million, I think it is, per year. And then we actually allocate that to the different departments, and they are then paying into this fund through this internal service fund. So if anybody works in government, you might be familiar with this concept. We actually do this already with equipment. And then because we have kind of an unusual situation here at the district where we often have what we call mid-year funds available, where after we close the books from the prior fiscal year, we have some funds left over, that either additional revenue that came in or funds that weren't spent. And so we are committing to, when possible, take those mid-year funds and appropriate some into the MER fund. So that's what we were able to do this year.
So it wasn't because it ran out of money, you had to pull, it was the opposite. All right, thank you so much. That's
to build it up when we can.
That's clear. Thank you for clarifying. A lot of good work here. Thank you.
All right, good.
Okay, Linda Best.
Yes, I would just like to make a comment. I want to congratulate the district for adopting this policy and moving forward with it. It's so important to plan proactively for future needs, and you're doing that in a very responsible way. And to me, it's just one more example of the district's commitment to fiscal responsibility. So congratulations and thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's many people who worked on this. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Louis. Louis? Okay. Or Bruce.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
oh, go ahead, Louis.
Whatever.
Yeah. I just want to commend staff for the presentation. It's a very good presentation. And I just want to say, I think it's becoming the standard procedure or the best practices to do it this way. HARD is going through a big capital improvement program with a lot of renewed park and a lot of new parks. And we're starting that process of similar process to what of scoring and allowing and budgeting for that on a multi-year basis to renew it and keep it up. So it's a great process. I think it really relieves the district of a lot of future headaches and it saves money. So thank you. Great presentation.
Thanks. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Really interesting to hear about the program. Thank you. I assume that since this is for major infrastructure, there's another category called minor infrastructure, and that would be, I assume, ongoing maintenance of projects and would be handled mostly by park staff. And so my question is, are any of the major efforts also handled by park staff? In other words, is there a mechanism for park staff to do some of these major infrastructure improvements? And if so, then do they get contracted, or how? I'm just wondering how the financial instrument works. Thanks.
Yeah, so the first question about, is there a minor infrastructure process? I think everything that's not getting assessed by VFA is sort of automatically still on the pay-as-you-go system. So park staff put in requests into the work order system, and the worst, most broken thing gets tracked first. I think the operations does attempt to prioritize things a little bit more than that, but I think it's really only on the major infrastructure side that we've got this more planned approach at this point. And your other question
was about whether park staff actually does some of the major infrastructure projects.
Yes. So this is maybe a longer answer than you wanted, but so some of our MER funds go actually directly into the MAST budget. And so MAST is our major, oh God, Sharon, help me out here. Skilled trades, skilled trades.
Actually, that's a really good name. You can just leave it there, MASH budget.
Maintenance and skilled trades. So it goes directly into their budget, and its staff are not only charging their time to it, but also paying for different contracts out of it, buying small tools and doing work using the 553 funds, as long as they're doing the work on our assets. The rest of the money is sitting in the MER fund, and it gets appropriated to capital projects. So if it's over $100,000, it will get a project set up, and generally we'll contract those out. Going through the regular contracting process. Sometimes we'll use I don't know if you've heard about our job order contracting, which is like a modified way of contracting work out that's slightly expedited, where you do a contract for a whole year and you have contractors who are on call. I'm not giving this process full justice, but you have contractors that are available to do work that you sort of vetted, and easier to get work done because they're ready for you and they've sort of committed to be available to the district to do work, as long as it's only repair work. They can't build new things. So that's our JOC contract. So yeah, the funds are used both by district staff doing things in-house and also contracting it out.
Great, interesting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Deb, I have a comment and a question from the chat that I'll share with you. Michael Gregory says, Anthony Chabot is popular and tired. Staff have upped trail maintenance and it shows. New plantings always welcome. I don't know if you have a response to that, but that's input from a user of Anthony Chabot.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I don't have yeah.
Okay, and Andy Carey's asks, Ardenwood has a number of buildings related to a concessionaire, SPCRR. Were these structures assessed as well? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe we assessed every structure. So the consent, a lot of times our facilities, but they're owned by us. So we did assess them. Yeah, I can double check on that if you want me to get into that detail.
This is Andy Carey. I'd be obliged if you would double check on that because there's a peculiar arrangement in Ardenwood between the city district and some of the concessionaires, the farmer,
Is
for
this
example.
the farmer?
And I'm not sure what's what. That's all. Thank
Yeah.
you. By the way, good job.
Okay. Anyone who was unable to raise their hand who wants to speak up with questions, comments? Great. Well, thank you very much, Deb. We'll look forward to improved numbers next year.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next item on our agenda is PAC member comments. So I'm open to anyone who would like to comment.
Rick, I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Bruce.
So this is an announcement actually, which is due to some expanded workload and increased obligations. I'm going to have to step down from the PAC. And I've talked to staff about this, and it seems that it'd be best if I stayed until December. So I'm planning to be on the PAC until December. I wish we could have our Christmas dinner and I would say farewell then, but I guess it'll be virtually. But I wanted to say that it's been a really interesting and rewarding time on the PAC. I started in 2017, was appointed by Whitney Dodson. Oh, I should mention that Elizabeth Eccles, who is a replacement of Whitney and is my board member, is aware of my retirement. So learned a lot and tried to give good guidance as I've participated. And I really admire committee members and staff for their commitment to the parks.
Bruce, thank you very much for your service. We have appreciated your involvement and we're sorry to see you go. We will see if we can come up with a way to give you a virtual toast on your way out in December. Louis, you have a comment.
You're muted, Louis.
Let me go to Igor and I'll come back to you, Louis.
Okay, well, I had a question about fires. I know that in the past, we've had some fires in the park, and our firefighters have been busy doing that. Plus, they've been going outside the park and helping others as well. So I was wondering if we could get a little overview of the extent and the scope of that kind of work. The other thing I'd like to ask is, I know we've been doing a lot of work to try to manage the landscape to reduce the negative effects of fires. I guess you call that the mitigation for fire. And I was wondering if we have any evidence of benefits of that, given the number of fires that have been around. Anybody care to enlighten us on that?
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned this because we, Sharon and I were just talking about maybe trying to find a time for our fire personnel to present, but as you can understand, they're extremely busy right now, actually working all over the state. So
You're fading in and out.
We'd have to wait till after fire season. But with regard to your question, we actually have an instance in Tilden at Grizzly Peak where an area that was treated, meaning vegetation management and brush was removed, a fire started, and our personnel were able to put it out extremely quickly. And had we not have done the vegetation management, it would have been a much harder fire to control and probably would have been in the range of a catastrophic fire. So we do have instances like that where we've done the work and it's prevented a fire from spreading, which is part of the goal. It's not necessarily that it will be prevented, it's just easier to contain it.
I'm hoping that we can capture those instances and use them as a incentive to do more.
Yes, we'll see if we can include something after the fire season is over, see if we can get some additional information for you, Igor. Louis, do you want to jump in now?
Yeah, I was gonna, Igor said almost the same thing. I just want to echo it. I think it'd be great if we had a report on fire planning, I guess, fire prevention or living with fire, because it's sort of the elephant in the room. And of course, it'll be after all of these emergencies, perhaps sometime in the winter or spring. That'd be great. And just request for staff if that's possible. I'm sure that's a major discussion that's going on right now. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Adela.
Yes, thank you. Would this be an appropriate time to mention the working group?
You can. I was going to mention it in my report, but go right ahead. How about if I give a brief introduction and then let you take it? As most of you know, the trails have been on our working agenda for quite a while, and this year they've gotten pushed back a bit by the interesting year that we've had. And recently, staff put together a trail users working group and recruited 3 of us from the PAC to serve on that. I will be serving Adela and also Michael Gregory. And so we've only had 1 meeting, so we don't have a lot to report yet. Our next meeting is in November, but let Adela talk to you about what we've accomplished so far, where we're going, and what changes we'd like to see in the group.
Okay, well, our major accomplishment is the next meeting is November 13th. The group is fairly large. I don't know, 20 some people. And it has, the composition is representatives of a variety of trail users, hikers, dog walkers, equestrians, mountain bikers, people from—
Bird watchers.
Pardon?
Bird watchers.
Herb watchers, native plant enthusiasts, wildlife enthusiasts, the Sierra Club, also representatives of some of the, I think there's somebody from Outdoor Afro and some other organizations. The group is led by planning staff from East Bay Regional Park District. So that's Brian Holt, and actually Devin Roof, who's I understand fairly new at the district, is kind of being the point person right now for that. And they also retained a facilitator from MIG, which I think is a really good idea. And so the initial meeting, everybody kind of introduced themselves. We talked a little bit about what the mission of the group is. As stated by Park District staff, it was to assist staff and provide input on various issues with trail use by various trail needs and so on. And I think that everybody in the group at this last meeting agreed that it was to make sure that there were trails for enjoyable use by all and safe use by all. As you can imagine, with quite a diverse group like that, there will be times when people will disagree on things, but I think we all have the same goal to all be able to get out there and enjoy the trails. One of the things, the group will meet quarterly. That's the current plan, and the plan is to address trails in new park developments, and then the group actually also wanted to address existing trails as well. So that's kind of, I'm sure that'll be a topic of discussion at the next meeting. What was the last thing? Oh, the one thing that I wanted to say, and hopefully I have the PAC support on this, is that I feel very strongly that we need to include young people as a trail user group. Many of you know that I feel that, you know, the young people are the ones who are going to become voters. They're going to be the ones who will have to carry on our enthusiasm and love for the park district. And so if there's a way that we could incorporate a youth component onto this working group, I think that would be good as well. And I've asked Michael and Rick to convey that message at the next meeting because I won't be able to attend November 13th. But I guess you want to add anything
I'm going to
else?
jump in.
Yes, please.
If you can hear me, I went to phone, the computer was not working. So I reached out to Ann Kassabaum because she was part of the strategic plan for youth engagement back in 2013, and they did that big project with San Francisco State. And it was pretty well done at the time. So I reached out to her to see if I could work with staff. And she does have an outreach coordinator. That's her job for the district, is trying to get youth engagement. So I'm going to see if she can attend meetings. I've forgotten her name briefly, and or not. And if she can't, at least provide some kind of input from what they have. There's data in the district. And just like these surveys, we got to pull them and see where it can lead us. But yes, I'm behind the youth involvement 200%, and we'll express that.
The other thing also is I think that the presentation that we just saw today from Eric and Lisa had some very valuable information that we should also draw on. Again, you know, I know the Park District is a large organization, and sometimes, you know, planning may not have seen this particular presentation, but we should draw on all those resources. And the other thing that I forgot to mention, that one of the groups also involved in the working group is dog walkers, because as most of the PAC members know, we had a big outreach effort dealing with trail issues with dog walkers. So we want to continue their involvement as well.
Thank you. I would just add to what Michael and Adela have said, that if other members of the PAC would have questions or have additional input for us, please feel free to reach out to any of the three of us individually and let us know what your thoughts are. And we'll be coming back after our, probably more next year, it'll be after our November meeting, but coming back with reports from the working group for the PAC to keep you in the loop. Great. Elisa, you have a comment.
I have a comment. I've been on the PAC for a while now, and through my time in the park, we get to make acquaintances and friendships with staff and people throughout the district. And I came across a story of something that happened to a friend of mine while they were working. They were at a park in my ward, or the park that I represent, and a park user came by on a bicycle, coughed in their face, and continued to ride by. And of course, in these heightened times of COVID and general awareness of germs, then it wasn't just them individually, it was a group of park district staff that were standing there and that this happened to. And it was kind of the question of, how do you respond? What do you do? And this is a question for staff, although we don't have much left here at this point. But is there a kind of a playbook or a guidebook on what East Bay Parks, what our staff can do when they are encountered by aggressive people when it comes to these trying times? Because there's people that just don't, believe that we need to be careful, that we don't need to be aware of the transfer of germs, or that it doesn't impact us. And I don't think it's fair to ask our staff that are on the front lines of this and who have been there, as we've seen from the presentation that we had earlier, to continue to face this on their own.
Looks to me like Tony popped on, so I think he might be more appropriate to answer this question.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Anthony Chaburo, or Tony Chaburo, the AGM of Public Safety and your Chief of Police, and I'll apologize for the background noise. Got a lot going on at home right now. The first thing we always tell staff to do is give us a call. We're very proud of the relationship we have with operations, and we do train them not only in basic safety and their personal awareness, but crime prevention and also communication. And we want them on the radio right away calling us, no matter what it is. And we've talked about that in the labor task force. Anytime something comes up, perhaps they feel it's an issue about which they feel powerless, or if they feel insulted, we want to call, and we tell them to call the supervisor. And that's really how we start off doing that. And we do give them basic instruction that's called frontline training on their personal safety. And I can tell you, this is my second agency for which I've worked, or for whom I've worked. And I can tell you that operations staff is wonderful. They are really they observe well, they contact people, and it's really remarkable the work they do in terms of keeping the park safe. But we are concerned about their safety, and safety is our priority. So I apologize. I caught that question about halfway in the middle, so I don't know if I answered that, or if Eric, you want to help me out, or I'm not sure if I got that right.
I think, sorry, Tony, to put you on the spot there, but I guess the question about how do we react? I mean, I guess the general manager's statement has been the last thing in the world we want is to put park staff into a situation where they're in an extended confrontation with a user where there's a lot of exchange. So we do have, I believe, protocols in place for how to handle those situations, but it doesn't mean that they won't ever happen. But I know that we are not seeking out opportunities to have extended debates with park users, whether it's over a mask or whether it's the situation that you were describing, or other instances of confrontation. And I will say that there are probably more instances now than pre-COVID, and tensions have risen more than historically. And I know it's something that we're very concerned and sensitive to. So I hope that answers the question. And maybe Tony, since I elaborated a little bit, if there's anything more that you want to add. But the question was basically a person on staff has encountered somebody that biked by and sneezed or essentially,
Popped in their face and then continue to bike by. It was a group of East Bay Park staff members that was intentionally coughed upon. It sounds weird to say it, but that's what happened. And then the park user continued to bike by, but they stopped and intentionally coughed on them. And so it was just seeing if there is a playbook or, just kind of a checklist for how staff members can react to situations like that. And then also another question is, is this something that has occurred in other parks or occurred multiple times, like where you have people that are intentionally doing things to that expose staff to germs? Because of it seems like this person did not believe that they were contagious, that they should be concerned that they could spread anything. And the staff members were, of course, wearing masks. So the person that coughed on them was not. So it seemed malicious. It seemed concerning to me that somebody would actually do this to staff members that are out there working. And so I'm just seeing what resources there are.
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. I think first off, they need to call us and then we'd investigate that. And probably that's a case we would send to the district attorney for review. That can get a little complicated, but certainly the first step is they need to take care of their own personal safety and they need to call us. And it's not, unfortunately, that uncommon to have a dispute or staff to contact someone, whether it's an off-leash dog, whether it's a fishing violation, whether it's some type of conflict, and then they'll call us because the person is either intentionally just absolutely ignoring them. Maybe there's a certain lack of disrespect in that conversation. Whatever it is, we're going to respond on that, and then we'll assess it when we get there. There was a case either in San Francisco or San Jose where I think they actually went federal. They filed federal charges for someone deliberately coughing on someone. So that has happened in the Park District. I'm not aware of that, but that unfortunately that bad behavior occurs. And I think all over, I think with our patrons, what we're hearing is people are really, they're tired. The general public is tired. I think that the whole fatigue of the weight of what's going on in our country is really weighing on us, whether that's police, community relations, or COVID. So it's a very important point. And I just went through the weekend log before I came here. And on the log, I had some cases where people were not adhering to staff. Perhaps they were being disrespectful. And I make it a point as a chief. I said, look, that is a priority call and you get over there. And I want an assessment made for enforcement action when something like that happens, because they've already been warned if staff is talking to them. And if the violation is still occurring and we get there, why are we going to continue to somehow try to warn them or take an approach that's different than moving to the next level, which would be enforcement?
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. I see one more comment. Irene?
Hi, yes. I just had one question that maybe Eric knows. I'm not sure. But about the general manager, I'm just wondering, is the recruitment going forward, or has the general manager decided to postpone his retirement because of COVID? Do you know, can you give us an update on that?
I'm not really at liberty to say. That's a matter between the board and the general manager. But I know that there are discussions and conversations about it.
You're cutting out, Eric.
I just said I'm not really at liberty to say, and I don't actually know, but that's a conversation between the board and the general manager. And I think, you know, when there is a decision of some sort, we would report back.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Anyone else? Someone who can't raise their hand wants to speak up with comments, questions? You've had my report from the chair with regard to the Trail Users Working Group. So we'll get back to you on that as it develops. Has anyone attended board committees that you would like to report on? Is there any old business to bring up? Any new business? Given that, it appears there are no other comments. And so as of now, the September 28th, 2020 meeting is adjourned at 6:01 p.m. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 26, 2020 at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.